What's good, YouTube? It's me, Squid, back in another Squidio. We got a YCS happening in the midst of this weekend. I just got back from pre-registration from Ycs Vancouver. I was honestly pretty surprised. This is probably the smallest YCS venue I've ever seen. They literally had this huge convention hall, but they kind of like blocked it off with, you know, those black flag thingies that they have behind the Konami stages. And there's only a little section. So I'm actually not sure how many players we're expecting to get, but from the pre-reg itself, there was definitely no line whatsoever. This is the first in all of Yugioh history where I never saw a line of YCS. So I'm expecting it to be kind of tiny, probably 300, 400 people max. And it's probably going to be on the league of a regional. And the thing is, we just discovered that actually it's not being streamed, obviously, because it's in Canada, but there were a lot of New Yorkers, a lot of good players from New York whose flight actually got canceled because of the weather conditions, so they're not even going to be here. So I'm not really sure what to expect. I think there will be still some good players, but obviously it's not going to be super as competitive as a California event. That being said, though, I wanted to create a video talking about some of the plays, some of the common trends that are actually going to be prevalent at this YCS. So if you're actually attending, this will be good to know. Otherwise, if you're attending a regional or just playing competitively on your own time, these are some really, really cool interactions to know. And the first one is obviously against Unchained, learning where to nib when they use one tour guide, because it's actually possible for them to play around nib with one tour guide. And in this video, we're actually going to show you guys how, just so you're prepared for this weekend. So Unchained players, take note. If you're not an Unchained player, take note on where we want to nib exactly. It's a little bit hard to say sometimes because you really don't know what cards they have in their hand, what other extenders they have. But from a high level, this is the kind of details that you have to pay attention to. Obviously, they're going to have 4 other cards in their hand, with the one tour guide being committed to the table. Going to bring out the Rhino, going to make Yama, very standard. Chainlink 1 Yama, Chainlink 2 Rhino, just to chain block the Yama from anything weird. Gonna dump the SHARVARA for free, and then gonna set the Abominable Chamber of the Unchained. Now, this is kind of a weird spot. It depends on what they have in their hand. If they happen to have another copy of the Chamber, they might go for the Escape instead. But if they're generally going for Chamber, that might be a good telltale sign that they either have Escape in their hand or they only have this one extender, because I think generally it's probably better to commit Escape to the table, because obviously that's actually an interrupt, whereas Chamber is only an interrupt when you actually have the level 2 dog in the graveyard. And if they nib before that, that means that Unchained Chamber is just not a disruption. But anyways, I digress. We're going to set Unchained Chamber here. And then from here, they're actually going to go ARUHA, going to go add it, and then ARUHA effect to pop the Unchained. They can obviously add SHARVARA as well, but ARUHA is the one that you want to add specifically for this combo because it gets the floating effect when she's destroyed by battle or card effect. Going to use the Chamber effect to special summon out a Shayama here. This is really important that they don't go for the Sarava or the Sarama, because if they get nibbed, then you don't have Shayama in grave, right? Like, Shayama is really, really nice because it's kind of nib proof when it has the effect in the graveyard to come back as a free level 6 body extender while popping one of your cards. So that's why it's really important for the Unchained player. If they're competent, they're going to bring out the Shayama right there. Going to use the effect of Shayama to actually pop the ARUHA. So this kind of brings out the same board, because you're going to bring out Sarama access, but you still have the Shayama for padding there with the graveyard effect if they happen to have nib. Now, personally, I actually gonna tell you guys that you have to nib here, in my personal opinion, before they actually set the trap back off of Sarama, because the minute they do that, they're getting a free advantage. There's actually not a good time to nib, and I'm going to show you guys what I mean by that. This is exactly how they play around nib with one tour guide. Remember, they do have 4 cards in hand. If you do not nib here, what happens is they're going to use the effect of Sarama to set back that one trap. Oh, actually, before that, sorry, they're going to link off into the level 2 dog, so the Unchained Soul of Rage. Now, this is kind of why it's important to nib before the Soul of Rage gets into rotation, because having Yama in the graveyard means they're going to be able to banish it to resurrect the Unchained Soul of Rage, as well as having the Chamber live as disruption, being able to bring back that Unchained Soul of Rage. Anytime that we nib after Rage is live into rotation, it means she's going to be in the graveyard, so they're going to come back and terrorize our board by quick linking, right? So that's kind of one reason to Nibiru. The other reason to Nibiru is obviously they're actually going to be able to set back the Abominable Chamber or the Escape if they happen to have the Chamber, vice versa. And then from here, what they're actually going to do is pop their own Rage and then use the effect of Rage to add back a Fiend monster in the graveyard. So whether that be a tour guide for follow-up or potentially a SHARVARA, because we have not actually used, they haven't actually used the SHARVARA effect in the hand as an extender yet. So that could actually come up in addition to the rest of their plays throughout their turn. Now, this is a really, really conservative combo because it ends actually on 1 disruption. So what's going to happen is Shyama is going to trigger now for the Sarama, and you can kind of see here that Nib already lost value because there's not really a good way to Nib. They got a free trap set as well as a free Shavara / any fiend back to their hand, and again, they have 4 other cards, so it means they already have 5 cards in their hand again, and these 2 cards are free on the table, and Nibiru is just like staring down negs, right? This is crazy. So they're going to bring back the Shyama. Them popping their own link actually allowed them to recur advantage. And then with the Sarama effect, they're going to bring out the Red Dog Shavara, and then they're just going to overlay straight into DD. So we're forced to Nib there when they have the 2 level 6s on the board, and that would have been suboptimal because they get the Nib token, and they have the trap set, and they have Shavara with 5 cards in hand total. So essentially, Nib is just not very, very good. If they have any other trap extender, they could just use Shavara to pop that other trap, and then continue playing and potentially link off with the Nib. So it's just a neg. If we don't Nib, then Caesar just negates it. So this is, I believe, what they do to actually play around Nib. I think Jesse Cotton do it in the stream, if I'm not mistaken. It's really, really cool how like intrinsically you have to, they just like get insane advantage. They have 5 in hand plus the Caesar plus the set. It's ultra safe. They have the chamber as well to bring back the Unchained Soul of Rage. It's disruption, so that's 2 disruptions as is, on top of the Lord of Yama being a potential recursion or a potential disruption if they're able to get Abominable into rotation in the grave. So guys, this is what I mean by them actually playing around Nib with the 1 tour guide. So you have... All right, so what about the case where they don't actually have tour guide and they're opening with a standard, either Sharava or the other one, plus one of the traps or the spell? Well, I think Nibiru could actually be held a little longer in this situation, so it depends on how the Unchained player is playing. But if they happen to start with the Shavara or ARUHA on the trap and then use the trap effect, go out into Shyama, obviously getting the Shyama rotation into the grave, so it's just a little bit more Nib-proof than ever. And then being able to link off into the Yama, chainlink 1 Yama, chainlink 2 Sharvara to set the opposite trap, which they're then going to pop. And I think if it's a better player, they're probably going to search Sarama and use it as a normal, because this would only be 3 summons, and then the normal on the Sarama would be the 4th summon, not giving their opponent an opportunity to even consider nibbing on the summon of Sarama, so they're able to get some value by setting a trap of their choice first. Obviously setting the opposite trap and then popping the trap that was set off Sharvara, using effect and bringing out. I think it really depends on what they play and like what their hand is. It might bring out the Unchained Soul of Disaster if they have the hand with the extra additional extender where they can play around Nib and still make the Griffin lock, or they might just go into the Abominable Unchained Soul to get that into rotation because it's quite good with Chamber being a non-targeting pop effect. So it depends on what they do here, but it doesn't matter. Obviously, you could Nib here, but there's Shyama still hasn't used the effect in the graveyard, so we don't really want to Nib right away. I think we can definitely wait. Obviously, they will be able to get the Unchained Soul of Rage into rotation as well, so that's another thing to consider. I think it's still a little better than that, because if they have the other spell card or potentially another trap, if they start with the spell card for the Shyama, they're still going to be able at least to make a DDD Caesar, so I think it's fine to get their Soul of Rage into rotation. We'd rather just wait for them to use and burn the Shyama effect in the graveyard, and then obviously follow up with the Sarama effect. And then from here, we can just drop the Nib. I think this is probably the best moment to do it. Obviously, it varies. Some players might not consider normal summoning Sarama. They might just go for the ARUHA instead and then pop the trap. In that case, when they normal summon the Sarama as a 5th, I think there could be an argument to potentially Nib there. But it depends, again, if they do have the Shyama effect used as well, because they're probably not going to have that use. So if they have another trap, they can still extend. So it does kind of depend on your hand as well, but potentially waiting in this particular line of play till after they use the Sarama to Nib at the very last moment could be correct, because this play requires a lot more resources. They spend 2 cards, so they're left with like 3 cards in hand. So they literally have to have open like 3 engine pieces in order to play around Nib specifically. So the chances of that are obviously a lot lower than the tour guide play, where the tour guide play obviously uses 1 card. So the best Nib can actually get out of that is a 1-for-1 interaction. So that specifically, you have to Nib on the Sarama there to get the 1-for-1 trade at best. Whereas this, I think you can just wait till this happens and then Nib them, and then it's a lot better. They only really have the Yama and the trap, and then 3 in hand. Unfortunately, it still is typically kind of a 1-for-1 because they do get to set the trap and they have the free Yama graveyard, but it's still like, I think, the best value that we can get at this moment. But if I'm wrong, guys, let me know in the comments below. I'm by no means an Unchained player. This is just what I've seen by researching the deck, how it plays, seeing the top players play it, and just going with all the different lines to Nib. All right, and the last thing I want to talk to you guys about is when we open a plethora of hand traps or 2 hand traps specifically in tandem with each other. For example, Ash Blossom, Joy of Spring, and Nibiru the Primal Being against Unchained. Which one should we use first and why? Well, there are a couple of variables, but from my testing, this is what I found. If they start with the tour guide, I'm always ashing that 100% because they really need another Fiend monster in order to continue their plays and go to Yama, which means they literally need a trap or Abomination Prison plus a name, ARUHA or SHARVARA, or the DDD engine if they happen to play that. But Ash can't be interacted with the SHARVARA in hand, unlike Valor and Imperm, which just makes us lose our target. So it's very, very powerful here. And again, going back to the first combo that we kind of demonstrated, if the player is a really good Unchained player, they're going to use the tour guide to maximize their value, meaning this Nib can only trade as a 1-for-1 on that Sharama summon. So it's not even that good, right? It's not getting intrinsic value. Whereas Ash has the opportunity to potentially blow out our opponent, them passing their turn, and then we have the Nib, which is a higher impact hand trap, especially after turn 1 in a grind game against them on the following consecutive turn, right? So in my opinion, that's just better to use the Ash, especially when we're not getting more than 1-for-1 value off the tour guide anyways, so why not just Ash it there? That's my opinion on that. And then the other one is when we have these 2 hand traps and they start off with the standard play non-tour guide where they have the trap plus ARUHA or SHARVARA, which one should we do? Obviously, we could actually Ash the trap here, but the issue with that, I think, is that if they do have the wild cards, aka Triple Tactics, Talent, or potentially Thrust, with Talents, they can actually rip out the Nibiru, which means that if they do have another extender, they're still going to be able to play. So any other Fiend monster being a normal summon on the table, they're going to be able to go to Yama and continue playing. So I don't really like that. I feel like Nibiru is a little bit of a higher impact hand trap that we should potentially just allow them to play into, because when they're doing this play, they're kind of investing 2 cards into it. So depending on how it plays out, we can definitely get value out of this Nibiru. I think at least for 2-for-1. Sometimes they do get the trap set, so it's not a true 2-for-1, but it's still like taking private knowledge that they previously had, 2 private knowledges, and just like making Nibiru to take care of that. And then on top of all of that, if the Nibiru doesn't stop them, we would have the Ash for their follow-up, assuming they don't have Tactics or Thrust. I don't know. I just feel like playing the Ash as a first interaction on Chamber doesn't guarantee that they're going to stop either. So even if they don't have the Talents or the Thrust, well, more specifically Talents on turn 1, they're still potentially going to have another Fiend extender and then still go to Yama, and then we're still going to be able to force to use the Nibiru anyways, so we're kind of like wasting the Nibiru, whereas the Nibiru might have done significant damage where we get to keep the Ash, right? So that's just one thing to consider, and obviously Tactics, being able to rip the Nibiru if we do Ash there, I think is just too much. So potentially, I feel like we should just use the Nib and then have the Ash for the follow-up. But I would like to hear your guys' thoughts about that in the comments. This is more like what I've been thinking, considering the minimal lines from what I've seen what the deck does, with Tactics in mind and potentially Thrust for them to set like another copy of their trap to as an extender. But guys, let me know what you think in the comments below. Other than that, I'm actually going to post some vlogs of what happened at the locals as well as the YCS pre-registration today, which will be following this. Other than that, guys, check that out. If you like this video, subscribe, rate, comment, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye. Going up to Magic Stronghold. This is the locals on Thursday. Holy smokes. There's so many people. Jesus. Hey, how's it going, man? Are you guys playing? What is this game? Oh, dude, there's so many people here. It's crazy.
We're surprised too.
Nice to see you guys. It's been a minute, eh?
Yeah.
Holy smokes, so many people. Everyone's dueling. All these Yugioh players. Hey, what's up, bro? How's it going? Are you playing in the tournament?
I'm missing cards.
Oh man, some unlimited half.
Crazy.
We got some trap tricks. Holy smokes. Wow. Yu-Gi-Oh players everywhere. Oh, window. Holy smokes. Right? Pokemon. This guy's over from Germany. Brought like, holy crap, all these max rarity foreign cards for swap and trade. It's crazy. All Europrint. Look at that. Engaged in German. Psychokinesis?
What is the German way to say that?
Blitzsturm. This is crazy, guys.
Gering Fedina.
This is what you see if you come to YCS.
Fedina.
A lot of people coming from other continents and countries, and they have swaps and trades. It's absolutely crazy.
Gering.
It's definitely awesome to get some foreign cards, and they like American cards, so you can make easy swaps nowadays.
Where's your other one?
Yo, what's up? We ran into Connect Gaming here randomly, and he's like, yo, I was watching your video, bro.
Much love, man. Insane YouTuber.
This guy's a Blackwing goat, so check out his videos for Blackwing stuff, guys.
Much love, man. Much love. Thanks.
Wow, this deck box is so cool.
Open inside and see like
What's the like difference in oven?
the dice on the compartment.
What's good, YouTube? We're here at the store here at the Fact TCG. What's up, bro? Are you playing Unchained this weekend?
Unchained? Is that like a new thing that they just added? Like
Yes,
a
sir.
I didn't put it in this deck. Yeah, you can have a look, yeah.
Damn, they pulled the Changeroo. Holy smokes. Labyrinth? Starlight Route. Whoa, that's crazy. This man just won the YCS with Unchained, and now we're playing Labyrinth. It's crazy. Got a... Is this Starlight?
No, it's a collector.
Collector. That's awesome. So, do you have any expectations for the event?
I don't think Labyrinth's gonna do well. I think Exo Sister is a pretty interesting deck.
Yeah.
I actually want to build one myself. And then, what else is there? Oh, another one that I'm interested in seeing is Rika. See how they do. But I don't have any. After some of the nationals, I don't have high expectations for this deck anymore.
Got Ash Blossom. Cool, man. Well, thanks a lot. Best of luck in the tournament. Hopefully we don't face each other. Alright, guys. We're here. Day 0 of the YCS. Mansion Hall is right beside these cruise ships. It's freaking nuts.
Can you imagine someone stealing it from a binder and just jump out of cruise ship? Just pay the fine. Sold like a 30K binder.
Wow. Damn, this is gonna be a small event. Holy smokes. This is the smallest room I've ever seen for YCS. Damn. It's like smaller than the regional venue.
Come on, Squiddy. Let's go.
I guess a win is a win, right? Guys, this is the emptiest YCS I've ever seen. Holy smokes. It's gonna be a small YCS. On the bright side, I got these out of my pack.
Yeah.
Big card.
Here's my Edison bag.
PT Gold Star. Prize card. PT Gold Star.
Oh, that's for Kenny.
Prize card. What's her name? That thing. Mewtwo.
How about we roll for it?
Bitch. Guys, we just signed this Moki Moki.
What's up?
Ethan, what's up, bro? Thank you so much for this Moki Moki that we've tarnished with their ink.
You made that like 10 times more expensive. I don't know what you're talking about.
Hey, thanks a lot, man. We're back with our boy Kevin, and he's got another box of sealed product. This man loves opening sealed product. What do you have to say for yourself, Kevin?
I'm nagging $80. That's all I can tell you.
80 CAD?
Yeah. It's not bad.
Oh, who cares?
It's cheap. One blackjack hand, right? Are you gonna park tonight? It's far. We're like 45 minutes from here.
And he pulled nothing. Rip. Got the money matches. Yugioh.